in, ladies and gentlemen, to NBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up? Really like that. You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
What is up, my beautiful people, and happy Tuesday to you. Welcome into the Film Guy Network. We have a loaded show for you guys tonight, and I want to start with this: success leaves clues, right? Or at least that's what we've always been told. If you want to find out how, just pay attention to the successful ones. They've probably left some tea leaves out there for you to pick up on, particularly in the world of football. I don't care whether your favorite coach is an offensive coach. I don't care whether your favorite coach is a defensive coach. I don't care whether or not your coach or your favorite coach is dad coach football. I don't care. Whoever you talk to, whatever your favorite football coach is, I guarantee you, if you sit down and you break down the philosophies with that individual about why they believe what they believe about the game of football, 9 times out of 7, that individual will give you some type of story about, I do it this way because this guy did it this way. I do it this way because the guy that I studied before me did it this way. I did it this way because an opponent did it that way, thought it was interesting, applied it to my program. Talk to any ball knower, talk to any college football coach in the world, and you will hear from them, or any football coach in the world, honestly, you will hear from them that they have stolen the parts of their football program. They have stolen ideologies of their football program. They have stolen typical or standard operations of their football program from other people. This isn't just in the football world either. This is how we operate as humans. We see something that is successful. We see something that works, and we either duplicate it, we either replicate it, or we renovate it. That's about it, right? We either duplicate it, we renovate it, or we create a new, right? We replicate it. We try to create exactly what they've done the same way. That's kind of human nature. So when we see Michigan, right, when we see the Michigan Wolverines go about winning a national title in the way that which they did this season, the first question will become how, right? How do we go about understanding how Michigan did what they did this year? Because they did it in a very unconventional fashion, right? They did it in a very different way than previous winners, particularly in the college football playoff era. This Michigan Wolverines national title team was very, very different from others. So when we say that, how do we go about understanding the how? How did they do this, right? The title of today's, film, or not film study, the title of today's show is explaining how Michigan did this. How? How did they go about doing it? So let's try this, right? First and foremost, San Diego, Stanford, San Francisco, Michigan. Not a lot of consistencies, not a lot of similarities between any of those football programs except for they won under Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh found a way to win at all of those programs. Now, this is the first time he's won at this rate at any of those programs, but nonetheless, dude was a winner at all of those programs and all of those organizations. So I think that's where we start with this Michigan discussion of how. Well, first and foremost, they've got great football coaching. That's obvious, right? This dude has won at every level. He's won at mid-major levels. He's won at Power 5 levels. He's won on the NFL level, one of the very few to win on the NFL level and then win on the college level, or win on the college level and then go win on the NFL level to return to college and have success. The across natures of football, this dude's won at a rate that other people really haven't. So I think first and foremost, that's obvious. They had great coaching over this regime and over this time period at Michigan. That's the easy one. The hard one to really put a nail into or put a finger on is the philosophy, how they've gone about playing football over these years under Harbaugh at Michigan, right? And the way that they've gone about it. And honestly, I've taken my stabs and I've made my jokes about the identity with which they've chosen to play football over the last couple of years, right? I didn't think it was necessarily possible for you to be able to run, cloud of dust your way to a national title in the world of college football nowadays, but at least they have an identity, right? I made my jokes about it. I talked about it. I poked fun at it. And we talked about the stagnation of the offense throughout the year. And then they go on to win a national title. But I don't think at any point did I ever make fun of the idea that they had an identity. In fact, I think that's one of the key components to becoming a national title football program. Like, you have to know who you are and you have to consistently attack that and consistently build onto that and consistently, try to win with that approach and never waver from it, even though I do think there was a time period in the Michigan regime where they kind of wavered away from this 12 personnel. We're going to run the football, extra offensive lineman type stuff that Harbaugh's been doing dating back all the way to his Stanford days. So I think there was some swaying from this philosophy, but in the end, his philosophy of we are going to be a limiting possessions football team, we are going to be a run the football team, and we are going to be a play great defense football team. Eventually, those philosophies and that ideology, that's what created a national championship winner for Michigan. And honestly, they did it in a much newer path than the rest of them, right? If I were to just lay it out like that, the idea that you're going to be a run the ball, play great defense, limit the number of possessions, the idea that you're going to be one of those football teams that win a national title, that is not foreign to college football. Alabama did that for the better part of Nick Saban's regime to start the run at Alabama, right? It was ball control, it was defense, it was suffocating, right? But the difference here and the uniqueness of this path, in my opinion, and the stats will back us up here, is that this unit and this football program took this path to national title success in a very different way, in the sense that the other teams that have been line of scrimmage based, limiting possessions based, great defense based, all of those teams in the history of college football have been absolutely loaded down with NFL football players. I'm talking about 4 and 5 stars, high quality 4 and 5 stars, dudes that in high school people told were dudes. And the only position group at Michigan that I can even look at right now on paper and say, golly, they have had a plethora of elite football players, first-round caliber football players at that position. They weren't even on the roster this year when they won a title. But I think this room that I'm going to talk about is a microcosm of the entire regime and the entire culture and the entire program at Michigan right now. And it's that defensive ends room. Okay, you guys know Aiden Hutchinson. You guys know David Ajabo. You probably don't remember Mike Morris, but those 3 names, those are 3 first-round draft picks at the defensive end position. And again, they are a microcosm of exactly what we're talking about here tonight. Aiden Hutchinson was the highest-ranked player of all of those guys. He was ranked 88th coming out of high school. He was not a 5-star. He was a 4-star. He was the number 2 overall draft pick. Okay, and you could argue he should have been the number 1 overall draft pick. And I know this is a Georgia station, this is a Georgia network, and saying that about Trayvon Walker, blaspheming, especially what he's done this year. But the career paths are kind of comparable right now on the NFL level. Nonetheless, David Ajabo, the next name, that dude was number 220 in the country in rankings coming out of high school. Mike Morris, the other first-round draft pick that was drafted last year out of the defensive end position at Michigan, the backup to these 2 individuals, he was a 3-star coming out of high school. But if you look at all 3 of those individuals, none of which were 5 stars, all 3 of them shared traits. They were all 6'5 plus. They were all 240 pounds plus coming out of high school. They all lacked something to make them a quote-unquote 5-star. They all found that something during their time at Michigan to be drafted like a 5-star. So again, that room was higher recruited than any other room that they have on their roster, period, maybe apart from quarterback. But that room and how they went about designing a plan for what they wanted in the room and then executing that plan for what they wanted in that room, that is exactly how they went about building the roster from top to bottom all the way throughout, right? The title for Michigan is very talent-based, but it is also very much so coaching-based and development-based. And what will tell me this is what I had Jay Will run down today. I made a statement yesterday in my reaction show that they built this different than anybody else. They have not been recruiting at a top 7 level. They have not been recruiting at a top 5 level. Yet here they are dominating the line of scrimmage in a college football playoff game multiple times over against multiple different teams from multiple different regions across the country. And guess what? They did it with very, very minuscule levels of talent in comparison to the rest of them. Jay Will, give me the stats on this, please.
So the offensive player rating on average on offense is 341.2, and it's the exact same on defense. It's a singular point difference, 342.2 for the defensive side of the football, and so that overall team average on the 2 deep for Michigan was 342 on the dot.
And this 342, this is their average player ranking?
Yes, this is composite rankings for the 2 deep on both sides of the football.
And this doesn't even account, I would imagine there were some players that you found that weren't even ranked?
There was one player that had an NA next to his name. It was not even ranked. And there were multiple players that were ranked past 1100th.
So just for reference here, you said 342?
Yeah.
Okay, so just for reference here right now, I'm looking at the 24/7 composite rankings for the 2024 signing class from the University of Georgia. As of right now, it looks to me like 14 of the 28 signees are inside the top 230. So not even the top 340. I'm talking about the top 230, and the rest of them. I mean, some of these guys are 4 stars and don't have rankings yet. I think that's a bigger point to what 24/7 and those folks have going on than anybody else. But nonetheless, this is a football program that did not recruit like a national powerhouse that developed into one. So I think if there are some studies to be done about what Michigan did and whether or not it's repeatable, we're going to talk about here in a second. But if there's anything to take away from this, it's that development matters, right, guys? Like, holy smokes, this is a football team that did not do any of this type of elite level recruiting, and yet here they are at the end of the year standing national title winners.
Yeah, I mean, development at the end of the day is the most important thing to any program. Yeah, if you can get a bunch of 5 stars in it, puts your chances of winning a lot higher, but you have to then develop those 5 stars into players that can actually play on the field. We see it all the time. You see a bunch of guys in the top 10, high recruiting rankings, go to different schools, and they don't pan out. That's because development. It's not that they weren't talented. Obviously, they wouldn't be 5 stars if they were.
And look, man, like they're hitting home runs with their 5 stars too. I think I looked it up. The only 5 stars on the roster are J.J. McCarthy and Will Johnson, the corner. And them some dudes, right? Those are some absolute dudes playing for them right now. So when they needed a 5-star, I think Will Johnson's from the Detroit area, or maybe from the local Michigan area. But nonetheless, when they needed a 5-star and they needed to land one, they did. And not only did that 5-star come to Michigan, but that 5-star played exceptionally well during his time in Michigan. So yeah, welcome into tonight's show. We got a loaded one for you. If you're watching tonight and you're like, dang, I expected him to talk some dog to start the show. We have moved the local hour to 9 o'clock. Don't leave me. All right, we got another 45 minutes before we get into that. The reason being, we found that you Georgia folks, y'all love us. Y'all gonna stick around no matter what. I hope that bears true tonight in the stats. But for the folks that found us via an algorithm, right, whether it be Michigan fans tonight, whether it be whoever that is not a Georgia fan, we didn't want to inundate the new audience with an hour of stuff that they don't really care about. So we're going to give them an hour of stuff that they might care about, that you definitely care about, and then we're going to finish with an hour of stuff that you 100% care about. So welcome in. We got a great one for you. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, and rate and review, and all that good stuff. If you miss any portion of today's broadcast, it will be made available for you guys on podcast platforms. I promise you, I'm going to do a much better job of getting those uploaded for you guys, because I've noticed based off the statistics, you guys actually care to find our podcasts wherever they may be made available to you. So we will definitely be getting those up. Is what Michigan did repeatable? We just spent about 12 minutes talking about it. I want to talk about whether or not other programs or even Michigan could repeat what they actually did in terms of roster construction and execution of the plan that is put in front of them. We're going to talk about the massive elephant in the room with the latest in the developments in college football. What went wrong for Washington? We'll talk a little bit about that, and we're gonna give them 3 things that you learned in the season of 2023. We'll take a look at the early 2024 favorites, and Quinshon Judkins has officially transferred to Ohio State. So what I'm going to put in front of you, boys, is whether or not what Michigan has completed, knowing what you know, especially what you know, looking off the roster construction, is what they just did repeatable, not only for them, but approach it from like another school standpoint. You know, if you're Northwestern, is this possible? If you're one of these programs that hasn't won in 40 years, is this possible to create this 6-year wagon wheel on into a national title?
I think it's definitely possible. I think this is honestly the second year in a row that a team has gotten into the national championship game that has a roster constructed of this. I think we can classify TCU as a team like this that has lesser talent, that is not recruiting at a talent level like Georgia is consistently. And they got to the national title. They just ran into Georgia and they got obliterated and moved on from that. But I think that's what the difference is between TCU and Michigan is right here, of something that you've already alluded to, is the fact of how good of a coach Jim Harbaugh is. It takes a tremendous coach. And I think that kind of got buried under the cheating scandals, the suspensions and everything. Nobody wanted to talk about how good of a coach Jim Harbaugh was. And I think we did on the show a little bit of like, when Jim Harbaugh is on the field, when he is actually with the team, we see the differences in how Michigan is able to operate on the field. So I think it is possible, but it requires a tremendous college football coach.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely repeatable because, I mean, for the most part, Michigan's done it 3 years in a row now. They've won at least, 12 games for 3 years straight now. They've made the playoff 3 times in a row. I wouldn't recommend doing it if you're another team. If you're a Northwestern.
Not a lot of room for error.
No, if you're in Nebraska, if you're a Northwestern, if you're a different team that isn't necessarily a powerhouse, I mean, you could argue that Michigan got by in this season by the skin of their teeth. Like, they barely beat Bama. They struggled throughout the season mightily. It took them basically just leaning on offenses or leaning on other teams using their willpower to win. So it's certainly repeatable, but I don't think it should be the blueprint for college football moving forward.
I don't think it's repeatable at all, and here's why. And it's something that I don't think anybody really talked about. I didn't hear a single soul mention this in any of the coverage. Michigan had 12, not seniors, super seniors on this roster. 6 of their offensive linemen that they rotated, 6 of the 7, super seniors. Those are either 5th or 6th year guys. Those are people who have played 5 years at bare minimum of college football. Okay? This was a roster that was completely made up of way too old football players. All right? Stuff that prior to 2020 and 2021 wouldn't have even happened, right? This Michigan offensive line, this Michigan draft record, whatever they claim that they're going to break, this stuff probably wouldn't happen if the rules wouldn't have allowed it. All right, so let's talk about that and let's mention that. And I'm not saying like everyone's had the opportunity to do it, but let's be serious. The ability for them to run it back and give this a run and have 7 graduate seniors on their offensive line, like this is only created in this window of college football. Had it not been allowed, they would have had 3 or 4 new starters on the offensive line, and they would have been going into the portal. Instead, they return almost everybody and have to go get 1 new tackle out of the portal. There is a massive difference in those 2 things. This isn't 1 or 2 super seniors. This is 12 super seniors, all right? 12 BYU Mormons out here. 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds out here taking their year off, going and doing missionary work, and then coming back and being 20 years old and starting their college football career. That is the equivalent of what has happened. All right. So at all of these universities, not just Michigan, but we have to be honest about that. We have to be honest about the fact that if it is quote unquote repeatable, it might be repeatable for somebody else, but you got to hope to have 12 super seniors that have played a bunch of football and who are really good football players that chose to come back to your university for a 6th year of college football. So that has to be made available. Also, I don't know how repeatable this is for Michigan. Like, best case scenario, they have 7 returners coming back next year. Worst case scenario, they have 5, one of which is a tight end, one of which is a fullback, and the other 3 are defensive players. They're your 3 better defensive players, right? A corner and a defensive tackle and a safety. Some really, really good football players for you. But even if all of those return, if everybody returns, you only have 7 guys, and then you have to pray for some more super seniors for guys like Blake Corum, which is very possible, but it's not going to be possible for this great offensive line that ultimately mowed down. So if we're going to sit here and say, is it repeatable? I don't think so. And guys, what do we do about this? What do we do about it? I don't think there's any loss of credit here, but we have to be honest about the fact that this front 7, this unit, okay, for Michigan offensively, was created through a loophole that was only made available via the COVID super senior, right? Is that fair to do that?
I mean, they won the Joe Moore Award 2 years in a row before that. Like they were deemed the best offense, and they weren't super seniors at that point. So I think saying that this season is a one-off and it shouldn't be counted. I mean,
I didn't go that far.
But like,
I just thought we have to go out and say the fact that they had all of these guys return, And 12 of them only returned because they were allowed to because of a special rule.
Right.
In modern football 5 years ago, this team does not exist.
Right.
We can say that.
That definitely helped and definitely
Just like we
contributed.
could say that about Stetson Bennett's quarterback play last year. We could say that.
Right.
That's fair.
Right, but saying that it's not going to happen again or that you can't repeat this again. I mean, no, you're not going to have 6th and 7th year players on the team, but you didn't have that in 2021 or 2022 when you made the playoff. Now, obviously, that those seasons went a little differently than this year, but you were in there. You still had the chance. I mean, they could have beaten TCU last year. So I don't think it's saying it's not repeatable at all just because of that, because they did have it with younger guys, and they had a good offensive line in years prior.
I think it's more of me saying that, like, the ability to time this window up was drastically lengthened by their ability to have graduate, guys playing for their football team. It added a plus year into the window. And we know, like, look at Washington, right? Look at Washington. Look how brief that window was.
Yep.
And now it feels like it's closed. I don't care how good Caleb DeVore is. They lose 3 NFL receivers and an NFL quarterback, and they're ranked 60th right now in national recruiting. Most people in their right mind would look at Washington and say, that's tough. I don't know when you get back here. Because you know why? It's fair to say because they ain't been there since 2016. So it's fair to do this to a lot of football programs. It would have been fair to do it to Michigan had their window closed on them last year. But again, these super seniors allow for this window to at least extend a little bit longer. Now, it was made available to everybody, so it's not the reason. I'm just saying that they're from a standpoint of, is it repeatable? It's very hard to say that, Michigan's got a blueprint, so why can't Texas Tech, or why can't insert program here that hasn't won it for? Why can't Nebraska? Okay, yeah, maybe, but you got to have a lot of things go your way from a timeline perspective. Most importantly, one of those being the super senior things. I think it's just as repeatable in terms of the window. It's just as repeatable if you're going to build it this way, off of experience, off of line of scrimmage play, off of development, right? You got to have the time to do so. If you're going to build it this way, I think it's just as easy to say, well, that's as repeatable, and the next school can do that just as easily as Washington just had 3 NFL receivers and 1 NFL quarterback. You see what I'm saying? I think the two are just as repeatable and just as likely to be done again by insert program here. I think this didn't prove anything. It didn't confirm my thoughts on this, but in order to be a year in, year out, that team's going to compete for a national title, we know for a fact. You got to recruit inside the top 5. The only way to consistently be around forever is to constantly rebuild with talent. I think that's the only option. Still, even though we just watched somebody win a national title, recruiting at mid-level, top 12, top 15, very mid from Michigan over the last couple of years.
I think it's interesting that they did this, and I know that this plays into a role with the super seniors, but the fact that I think they had like maybe 4 transfers or so that were starting for them. But this was not done via the transfer portal. I think that talking about knowing when to hit your window, knowing when to strive for your window, and knowing when to capitalize off of that window closing, I think is very important. I think we kind of saw that with Georgia the previous 2 years where they knew that they had a window and they capitalized off of it both times, knowing that in 2021 you had a lot of key returnees on that defense. You had a lot of guys came back on that defense and on offense. And then the next year it was Stetson Bennett coming back to play quarterback for you again. We've learned how important it is to have experienced quarterback play and whatnot. So Michigan was kind of in the same boat of you got Blake Corum back this year. You got some other guys on defense while also adding in a guy like Will Johnson, who I believe is just a sophomore this year, has another year. They knew when to capitalize off. It's just a matter of taking advantage of it, and they absolutely did that.
It was very interesting to me to just watch the line of scrimmage play, like we talked about earlier, and they don't have a 5-star. They don't have a 5-star defensive tackle. They don't have somebody on the interior. That Miles Graham kid's going to be a high round pick. It looks like as a sophomore next year he'll be highly drafted, but they haven't stacked them like everybody else has, and yet they develop them and have turned these football players into tremendous football players. But here's how I know this is an anomaly, in my opinion. From a consistency year in, year out, you're going to be there. Dude, Clemson let 3 recruiting classes slide on their ass. And now they're 8-5. Now they got to win 5 games in a row to finish 8-5. This is a team that was in the national title conversation every single year 3 years ago. They take 3 recruiting classes at the rate that Michigan has, and now they're 8-5. Like, that's all it takes from we just didn't have the right nucleus. We didn't have the right, upperclassmen leadership, and now all of a sudden we're back to a middling program. I'm not saying that's where Michigan's going, but I'm saying that could happen really, really quickly if there's any type of fall off in whether it be at Michigan right now, any type of fall off in coaching adequacy, and you're back to where you were. Because there's not much of a talent drop-off that there could be, right? We just told you, you're not recruiting at a top 5 level anyways. Clemson was, and now they're not. So now they look like an 8-5 program. I don't know how Michigan continues this unless it's just off the backs of Harbaugh's going to be here forever. We're going to continue to recruit at a middling level and develop better than anybody else in the sport on the lines of scrimmage and in the running back room.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jim Harbaugh is the key piece to all this. If you don't have that, I think you're in deep shit as far as your roster goes. So, yeah. But, I mean, if you do have Harbaugh, I mean, what he's given you the last 3 years has been fantastic here at Michigan Fan. I mean, he's lost, 3 games in 3 years?
Twice to Ohio State, once to Georgia.
Yes, I mean, he hasn't lost hardly at all. So, if Harbaugh's there, I think you trust what you have and you keep going with it.
Yeah, no doubt. Impressive none the least. I mean, yeah, going through these numbers, especially on the defensive line, because we all saw it in the national championship game.
They wreaked havoc.
That was the difference maker in that football game. And so I was like, going through those numbers, going through the rankings, I was like, for sure that's going to be the high. I mean, I can go down the list right now of all the interior defense linemen, like 247, 444, 513, 177, 294, 748. That's who's playing defensive line for Michigan this year, and they were the best players on the football field. It looked like
those are like
night.
Borderline 4-star guys.
Yeah,
and I would imagine that, and I don't want to stereotype 24/7 sports, or any recruiting service, but I would imagine a lot of those guys even got bumps because they committed to Michigan. You know what I mean? And maybe there's a whole lot of Southeastern bias in this entirely, right? Maybe, and I'm not saying maybe. I'm almost saying for a fact. I don't think the Northeastern hemisphere of the United States gets covered nearly as tough and as like on top of their shit as the Southeast does with regards to these recruiting analysts. It's just not possible. Like, I know for a fact I see Notre Dame reporters come down to Atlanta. Like, why are you here? Well, there's a 7-on-7 this weekend. Like, everybody's here. Every good player's here. They're down here. They're down here. So we see all these people more often. We rank all these people more often. I bet if you went through the 5 stars, you would notice that they are geocentrally located, right? A lot of West Coast in Cali, a lot of Texas, a lot of Southeast. Okay? How many 5 stars you see popping up from New Jersey? Not a ton. Not a ton, not very often. You know why? Because they're just not up there. Like, we're not up there very often to recruit these guys or watch these guys or look at them. It doesn't mean there's not great football players up there. It means your recruiting department, your development department, your scouting department has to be really, really, really elite. And I think that deserves some tips of the cap right there from Michigan's standpoint. But I think you're hard-pressed to, again, think that this is repeatable. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we?
Sure.
A pretty large elephant in the room. Pretty large elephant in the room. Now, there's actually 2 elephants in the room. One being, is Jim Harbaugh going to go to the NFL? A massive elephant. He's standing over there. And then the really, really big elephant that's staring at all of us is this question right here that I proposed to the chat. Jim Harbaugh got a 3-game suspension for lying to the NCAA about some goddamn cheeseburgers. What you think they're going to do when they close this investigation, right? Because it's not over. I'm not saying there's going to be vacation of wins or vacating of – I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't. But they suspended the head coach for, what, a third of the season?
Yeah,
a quarter of the
much,
season?
yeah.
For lying about cheeseburgers. What you think they're going to do? I don't know. I have no idea. But I think that's the biggest question left off of this. And I think it's why I cared far more about this investigation during the season than I ever will after it. Because here's what I'm not here for. I'm not here for vacating wins anymore. Like, who's that hurt? You vacate wins right now, all you're doing is hurting the players from Michigan. I think that's bullshit, okay? Well, what are you going to do? You're going to retroactively fine Jim Harbaugh? No, You can't do that. Like if he goes to the NFL, you're just standing with your dick in your hand with nothing. You got nothing. The NCAA has zero. So, like, honestly, I think they could make this thing really, really ugly. Will they? I don't know. Will we have an answer to it? No. I don't think we're ever going to have an answer. Not anytime soon. Okay, because the cheeseburgers we're talking about, that investigation came from 2019. They haven't even concluded the investigation on his daggum illegal communication during COVID. So this idea that this is going to come down to a final head, we're ever going to get any answers for it, no. You'll probably just strip Jim Harbaugh of his national title in his wiki page, and that's it. And honestly, is that any type of punishment? No. It's not any type of punishment. This dude's going to get away scot-free. He's going to walk off to the NFL. He's going to have a great time being the head coach of our boy Justin Herbert out there with the Los Angeles Chargers. And everything's going to go under the carpet and under the rug. And guess what? Here's what really frustrates me about this one. Those dipshits out here that was out here talking about, stealing signs don't matter. Watch. Ooh, they won it on the field. Why can two things not be simultaneously true? Why can it not be true that stealing signs in the manner in which they did is cheating and it definitely had an impact on the football game? And, oh, by the way, Michigan won a national title without doing so this year. Why can't both be true at the same time? No, we can't do that. We can't separate that. Because Michigan won, everything else doesn't matter. Cheating, stealing signs, doesn't matter. Knowing the play, knowing whether it's run or pass, doesn't matter. Bullshit, doesn't matter. Michigan won. That's what frustrates me the most is because great. Michigan won. They were the better team this year. That's awesome. But the dipshit in my mentions talking about, told you just had to line it up and play. We'll find out. We'll find out whether or not the NCAA thinks whether or not you really did just have to line it up and play whenever they finally conclude this investigation, which I don't know whether or not they ever do. So there, I just rant over.
I think that it's almost impossible at this point to truly give a punishment that either Jim Harbaugh or Michigan can feel and suffer from. Because,
correct.
For me, I could envision this of when the investigation closes, it's, okay, Jim Harbaugh, you're banned from college football for 5 years. Well, that's fine. I'm already in Los Angeles or I'm already at the NFL anyways, so I'll just stay here for 5 years or I'll continue my career there, and it doesn't matter to me whatsoever. Or you do any of the other things that you mentioned, you fine him, which whatever. I just think that and that's why I don't think that there's going to be this satisfactory conclusion to this for people who are against cheating or are hell-bent against it. I think it's just going to be 3 years from now, a verdict is going to come into place, and it's going to be, okay, well, that was pointless. I don't know.
I mean, all this basically sets us up for is 5, 10, 20 years down the road when people say who won the 2023 national championship. Some people say Michigan did, but it doesn't count because they cheated, and then everyone who liked Michigan said, hey, it doesn't matter, we won, you can't do anything about it. So
I think the line of demarcation right there is whether or not you live in the state of Iowa or Ohio.
Yeah,
that's about it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be an argument that goes in circles till the end of time. No matter what the NCAA does, no matter what kind of sanctions come down, people are still going to say Michigan won the title this year. There's nothing you can do about it. So I mean, it's a moot point at this point. No matter, and it's probably not even going to be another 2 to 3 years before we find anything out, unless the NCAA really has a fire lit in their ass and are hell bent on punishing Jim Harbaugh.
Can you guys separate the two? Can you in your mind say, ooh, that was cheating, definitely had an impact on the football game, while also saying oh no, they're good, they're national champions?
Yeah, I think I mean, pretty much since the Ohio State game, I've kind of came to that conclusion of okay, yeah, what you did was wrong, but now up to this point, what you're going to do further on into this season, this is legitimate. We're seeing that you are a good football team. We are seeing that you are worthy of being one of the 4 best teams in the country. And now that you've won the national title, I think we can say that you were the best team this season based on the facts that are given, based on who you beat, based on what you did late in the season. That's what you have to claim them as.
Love some good hard facts.
Yeah, I mean, you go 15-0 in a college football season. It's hard to say that you weren't one of the best teams, if not the best team in college football. So,
especially when you do it, I think the Big Ten was the 3rd best conference in the country this year. I would go, whichever you prefer, Pac-12, SEC, 1A, 1B, and then I'd say the Big Ten.
Yep.
And then the Big 12, and then the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
And ACC fans will say, "Oh, they were 7-5 against the SEC. You biased homer." Congrats, you beat South Carolina twice. You know what I mean? You beat a shit Florida team at the end of the year. Congrats. I think you got Kentucky. Good one. And then Kentucky got you back. All right, so or did Kentucky got them twice? I think Kentucky beat Louisville.
Kentucky
and
did
Clemson.
beat Louisville.
So
I thought Clemson won the Kentucky matchup.
Clemson
that's right.
Clemson won that game.
So they got Clemson, or they got Kentucky.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, congrats to you guys. You got LSU this year. You know, that was your big keynote win.
That was.
You beat the third best SEC team this year.
Fourth. I'd put Missouri before
because
LSU.
Ole Miss won that football game, right?
So
fourth.
You're forgetting about Missouri, bud.
Oh yeah, fifth. Congrats. Oof. You beat the fifth best SEC team this year. All right, let's get into this one. What went wrong? What went wrong for Washington? I'll let you guys start because I got a plethora of things that they just didn't do right.
I mean, basically the exact thing that you couldn't have go wrong, which was that D-line forces Michael Penix to pretty much throw off balance the entire game to the point where he's under duress. And then when he's not under duress, he's missing wide open throws uncharacteristically, or receivers are dropping balls. So, I mean, the game was never going to depend on what could Washington's defense do. It was going to be, is Washington's offense enough to overpower Michigan's defense and their smothering offense? And the answer was no.
I mean, from Jump Street, Michael Penix was rattled, and he never recovered. He never was able to get back to that. I mean, even when Washington was moving the ball down the field using tunnel screens or just kind of under small short field passes.
Yeah,
underneath. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. It never felt like he got into a groove, never got into a rhythm. It never felt like Michael Penix was settling back in. And, I mean, we saw that with the missed wide open field down throw, like overthrow. That's something we never saw him do throughout the season. He was just very uncharacteristic of himself. I think the clock got sped up for him. I think the defensive line he always felt the pressure even if it wasn't there. And the fact that he never settled back in. And at any point in time when everybody said why Washington would win this game, it was because, Michael Penix is playing quarterback. Well, Michael Penix was not playing quarterback last night.
That was my first bullet point on this section is Michael Penix, I think, had his worst game of the year, or at least looked the worst version of himself all year. And I talked about it last night. I don't know if you guys picked it up. Y'all definitely did because I was texting you about it. I thought Michigan did a better job than anybody I've seen in college football in a long time in disguising coverages. Okay, we look like we're playing one thing. We're going to play a completely different thing as soon as the ball is snapped. And they did so with essentially a true freshman at one of the safety spots. Keon Saab's back there playing safety, and I was watching him just like one specific play, and he did it multiple times, but he's flipping his hips pre-snap. And in one instance, he's showing like I'm about to open to the field, and he stands that way the entire time. And then as soon as the ball snapped, the other safety rotates to the middle of the field, and he drops into the hook. And what ends up happening is you see a quarterback for the first time all year hold the ball very indecisive about where he's throwing the ball. I didn't see a single ball last night from Michael Penix that he threw outside of a tunnel screen or anything underneath with 100% confidence. Every single ball he let go last night was like, ooh, I hope that goes where I think it's going. Ooh, I hope he thinks is on the same page I'm on, right? So that's the first thing that went terribly wrong. Michigan did a great job of getting Penix out of his mojo, out of his rhythm, right? Uncomfortable to say the least. But the other thing that I thought they did a really, really good job of, was they did the different defensive stuff, but offensively, man, when you start that hot for Michigan, when you come out and you score on your first two drives, you don't face a third down on your first two drives, like on the other side of the football, Washington gets sped up immediately. Washington's offense now feels like, oh shit, we got to score immediately. It's how you end up having 51 passing attempts in this football game. It's not just because they were down. It's because they had to basically give up the run immediately. Like they felt like, oh shit, now we got to score on every possession because we're only going to get 10 of them. And every single time they walk the ball down on us, we not only lose a score, but we lose a possession. Because that's exactly what Michigan does to you. Michigan goes into a football game where the national college football average is 12 offensive possessions per game. When you play Michigan, you automatically, per stats, get 9.75. So you've lost 2.25 possessions the moment you walk out onto the field. That is stressful. That's really stressful to an offense like Washington's, and they fell into it immediately. So that was horrible for them from the start, that 14-3 kind of open to this football game. But the other one, as you guys hit it right on the head, there's a lot of self-inflicted errors in this football game from Washington. They did not play like a national title winning football team on Monday night, right? Had Penix missed 2 critical, like wide open dudes. They had a drop from a running back on 3rd and 2 when they had a swing route completely called and perfectly. They had a double move late in the football game, only down 7 to get them inside the red zone. What do? Right tackle gets called for a hold. So it's like all of these things that you're doing that don't create opportunities for you to win a national title, on top of the fact that the guys on the other side of the football field played a relatively clean one. So yeah, I thought the biggest issue for Washington in this football game was when they go down 14-3. You're not cooked, but you are immediately stressed and pressed for time and for opportunities.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
sorry.
go ahead, you got it.
I think late in the game too, at least for me, like I was waiting when it was a 1-possession football game. I was waiting for one of those teams to make the big play. And, stats would say that Washington is the team that is going to make that big play. They're going to be the one to eventually hit on one, drive the ball down the field rather quickly and get a score and be right back in this thing. And it never happened. And then it was Michigan that made the big play and ended up putting them up multiple possessions. And it was like, dang, that's it right there.
I just wonder how much differently Jesse Minter and that Michigan defensive staff has to call this football game if a few of those explosives hit early. Right, they got all of this pressure and all this attention, and they're really, really getting upfield and getting after the quarterback, and they're just doing a lot of disguise coverage. They're not just lining up and playing football like most teams try to do against fast-paced, spread offenses. Most teams just line up, keep it consistent, keep everything in front of you, don't really pressure. They're not attacking. They're responding, trying to keep everything in front. That's how everyone's played this team. And I'm just wondering, like, early on in the football game, if Roman Dunze gets hit, right? And if he gets loose, he was loose. They blew a coverage because they were disguising it too late. And he's running right down the seam. Penix misses him over his left shoulder. It turns him around. They don't catch the ball. If that ball is a touchdown, right? If that is a 65-yard explosive, like it has been all year for Washington, how much different does Jesse Minter now call the football game? I would imagine it's totally different because what Washington scares you about is the chunk plays. 3rd and 13 is nothing to them. It has been nothing to them all year because a 20-yard completion is nothing to them. They just pump them out left and right. So it is the nation's most explosive passing attack, and I think a few of those misses, had they hit, the defensive game plan for Jesse Minter gets not necessarily thrown out of the window, but they get completely different on the defensive side of the football as a coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, and the score doesn't really indicate it, but Washington was within striking distance for pretty much the entire game.
The whole game.
And you just never could get anything going on. I mean, the defense, for all things considered, played a relatively good game. You had 2 really bad runs in the first half, and then, of course, you give up 34 points, but one of those was off a turnover where the game was pretty much over. They had the ball in the red zone, so it's not like the defense played horrible. The offense just shit the bed, honestly. That's what it was.
Yeah, I mean, the defense was able to do what the offense couldn't. I mean, those first 2 drives for that defense, it was like, oh, boy, this might be a really long night for you. I mean, they couldn't get
12 yards a clip.
They couldn't get Edwards or Corum on the ground. They were just bouncing off and couldn't tackle them. They looked slow. They looked quick out of their breaks. Like, everything about that defense was like, this is not looking too well. But then they started getting stops, and we were texting them, and we were like, this defense is doing everything they can to keep Washington in this football game and is giving that offense every single opportunity to put this game away. And even when Washington looked like they were going to capitalize off of it, like when they were on 4th and 10 down in their own, down in Michigan's end, you get the PI, but then you also get a holding call, and you just kept shooting yourselves in the foot. Nothing was going your way. And at that moment, it was, well, you're just not capitalizing off your opportunities.
I think part of the stagnation from Michigan offensively midway through that football game is because they were up 14-3. Michigan will do this to you.
Yeah.
Michigan will make you think that you have them controlled, but in reality, they're playing time of possession games. Like a 7-play, 35-yard drive that takes 5 minutes and they punt the football, buddy, that they won. They won that possession when they're up 14-3. Like, you may think you got off the field, and that's great, but they just milked clock, and that's exactly what happens with this football team. They play so goddamn slow, and it's slow and methodical while also still making your heart and your mind race the whole time as a defensive back or a defender, right? Like, they're in a huddle, and you're over there sucking wind, waiting to get punched in the mouth again. And then all of a sudden they break the huddle and they're in one formation and then they scatter to a new one. And by the time you get set, they're snapping the football. 35 seconds has ran off the play clock and you're getting punched in the mouth again. Like, it's a really different style of football that Michigan plays that nobody else is really out here doing. Like, ain't nobody out here huddling. Like, Nick Sabin talked about it on the Pat McAfee show this past week. That is the only football team they played all year that huddles. Like, think about that. That's nuts. That's where we've reached in the game of college football.
So I got a question out of this then, because for the last 3 or 4 years, it seems like the fast-paced, high-flying offense spreads you out, really stress your secondary, has been what's dominated college football. Does this kind of the pendulum swing back with what Michigan did? Or is it just like you said, just a one-off season where they had 7 guys that were 27 years old and just grinders?
So for me, we can win with defense and a game-managing quarterback. The threshold, because it hadn't been done in college football playoffs, like, go look at it. Every offense has won has been super explosive, except for the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Like, that football team was, I think Stetson was 3,000 yards passing.
And maybe
it was very Trevor Lawrence-y stats-wise.
And maybe that 2015 Alabama.
I was about to say
and
Jake Coker
and Derrick Henry and all that group.
Yeah.
That checks out. But guys, that's almost a decade ago. Like,
absolutely.
that's so
long time.
long.
Absolutely.
Like, football has completely changed since then. So yeah, this is a very unique path. Like, how many times this year did I compare them to 2019 Georgia?
A lot.
A bunch.
A lot.
Because that's what they looked like. They looked like a football team that was like, hey, here comes 50 rush attempts today.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to throw it 18 times. We're going to play defense. We're going to beat you by a score. We'll see what happens. And if we break your will, we're going to roll you by 3 scores. But until then, it's going to be a tight football game, and we're going to win in situational football. Yeah, I thought they did an excellent job all year coaching these guys up and getting things done. Should we give them 3?
Let's do it. I've done it in a
give
while.
them 3. 3 things that you learned about this year in college football. I don't think any of my 3 have been taken, so we'll start with you, Kirby.
So the first one I have is the transfer portal is just as, if not more important than recruiting in today's college football world. I mean, you look at all the elite teams, Texas, Washington, I can go on, I don't have off the top of my Oregon, just elite team after elite team.
Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, transfer portal, I mean, teams that their star quarterback was from the transfer portal. So I think that you have to not only hit in the transfer portal as much as you do recruit. I mean, look at teams that aren't doing it, like Clemson. They're falling behind. So
that was my very first one, and I'll go ahead and hit it because it kind of contradicts what you're talking about. I think the portal is for Band-Aids, not building blocks.
Oh, man, dang it.
Right? I think it is there to enhance your roster. I think it is there to fill holes and voids that are made available.
Mm-hmm.
But if your method is out here to build your entire program off of the portal, you will die a slow death like Michigan State.
Yeah.
You will die a slow death like Colorado is ultimately going to do. You have to have a good guts and good core and a good foundation, and then add onto that house.
Right, and that's why I think I'm saying it's just as important because you have to be able to utilize in this day of college football. You got to match both. Because guys are going to transfer out, guys are going to get hurt. You're going to need depth somewhere. You also need experience because of people transferring out. You're going to be throwing sophomores and freshmen into the fire. So you need that transfer portal expertise or experience per se.
What's number 2?
Number 2 for me was that the old saying defense wins championships, offense wins games isn't dead necessarily, but I've come to the conclusion that a good wide receiver core will always beat a good secondary, but a good D-line will always dominate a good offense.
Me likey. Immediate impact, immediate havoc. If you got a good, solid defensive line, you're going to cause some problems no matter what. I think the 50 front bear defense created that original myth back in the 80s.
Yeah. And then my third one, and I hate to say this, but the 12-team playoff might be the right answer for college football because, I mean, we had never seen it before where 5 teams, 6 teams really you could make an argument for, had a true legitimate spot at saying, hey, this is one of the 4 best teams in college football, and you can't put 6 in a 4-team format. So
normally we go 1, 2, and then 3 in this situation, but you kind of hit on my second one here. The portal created this.
Yep.
It's why we have 12 good options.
Absolutely.
It's why this year we had 6 good options, right? You mentioned it. If Washington doesn't have Michael Penix and Jalen Polk, they're not here. It's not in the equation.
Nope.
Those are portal additions. if Michigan doesn't add into the portal with offensive linemen and the linebacker that folded in J.C. Latham late in the football game, like, they're probably not here. Now, they might be, because all the graduate transfers that we talked about. But there's a lot of these football programs, Texas being one of them, right? If you don't land Quinn Ewers, what do you look like?
A.D. Mitchell, what do you look like? Their whole defense, not their whole defense, but a lot of their defense was comprised of D1 retreads and guys that transferred from other places. So, yeah, I think the portal has 100% forced us into a situation where 12 is the only answer, because if we didn't, we would have a lot of pissed off football teams remaining in these 14 playoffs. What do you got? Hey, Christian Kirby, give him 3.
Well, I didn't think mine were getting stolen either, but I think you kind of flirted around with them. I did have the transfer portal one. I worded it as the transfer portal can elevate you, but it cannot carry you to the promised land. There's a big distinction there. It can absolutely elevate your roster, but it's not going to be the sole reason why you get to that national championship game. My first one, though, I said veteran experienced quarterback play is arguably the most important factor in college football now. I mean, you look around at all the teams that are in contention for a college football playoff or were in the national championship game or in the playoff. Those teams had experienced quarterback play outside of Alabama, and I think it honestly might have been a reason why Georgia didn't quite get there, because they didn't have that experienced quarterback play. But J.J. McCarthy, that's a guy with experience. Quinn Ewers, that's a guy with experience. Michael Penix, that's a 6-year dude, plenty of experience. I think it has arguably become one of the most important factors in college football. The 12-team playoff, I put it as it may not be the perfect solution, but it's something that all college football fans need to see. Florida State fans need to see what would have happened to their football team if they got put in the college football playoff, because they need to put that argument to rest. They need to know that that's what was going to happen regardless of whoever
By
went.
the way, what a championship hill to die on for those folks. Because here's what the alternative was. Like, Florida State's going to get absolutely skull-fucked in the first round of the playoff by whoever they would have played.
There's one.
I think we all believe that. There's one. But now they get to sit here and be Mr. Petty the rest of their lives. Like, until they're good again, until they win a national title, they get to talk about how they were robbed of one in 2023 and about how the committee sucks and about how nobody likes them and how the ACC just is out to get them and the ESPN hoax and to hell with Kirk Herbstreit. They get all of these things now. When in reality, had they got in, they would have like a 35-point loss to Michigan if that were the case, right? Or at least we all think that, except for Florida State fans. They think they could have rock-fighted their way to a game in a national title. I don't know. I don't know what they believe, but obviously they believe that they were robbed of something. That you were robbed of an ass beating. That's what you were robbed of, and that's okay, because we finally got 3 great playoff games in a row. Like, I know last night's score didn't end up like that, but that game was tight and close for 40 minutes? 45 minutes of the 60 minutes? Like, come on, man. I think Florida State fans, great for you. You got something to bitch about the rest of your life. So that's awesome for you as a fan, because nothing better than a fan who loves a good take.
Yeah, so Florida State fans deserve to see that ass beating in the college football playoff. I think Georgia fans deserve to see what that team could have done in a playoff mix. I mean, you played your worst game one time. You had one loss by 3 points. You got kicked out of the college football playoff, probably undeservingly so, but we'll never know. But you deserve to know what that would have looked like for you. I think even Oregon would have deserved to see what their team could have done in a college football playoff game. You played Washington close twice, a team that made the national championship game. They played their worst game against Michigan, and they ended up losing. But it would have been interesting to see what Dan Lanning and the Ducks could have done. So it may not be the perfect solution, but I think that a 12-team playoff is something that every single college football fan base needs to see and will enjoy seeing.
Is that all 3?
That's all 3.
Hey, that boy Jay Will. Give him 3. All right, so I got 3 for you. Number one, like I said, the portal is for Band-Aids, not building blocks. Let's go in, let's add on, right? Let's go in, let's add on. And that's my first one. My also thing that I learned about this is that, like, thank God for the portal, and I know that sounds crazy, but thank God, because it's going to make moving to 12 make a whole lot more sense. And I feel that to my core. I was very questionative of this move to 12 because I thought it was going to demean the regular season, without realizing that demeaning the regular season is fine as long as it gives me a more complete answer about who was the better team at the end, right? If the game in October means less because I got a more definite answer in January, I think we can all, as college football fans, give that up. I think we can all agree to that, right? If the game between Georgia and Ole Miss in October means less so that Georgia gets an opportunity to avenge a bad day, Like, I think you're going to be okay with that. I think it's going to mean a lot more for you. And it's at least going to, as pissed off fans, because that's who we're trying to appease right here, as pissed off fans, you're going to have an easier time sleeping at night when you don't win a national title when you had an opportunity to do so. Right? That's obvious. I think that's the main complaining point that we're going to address in our local hour here in just a second. So, yeah, the portal definitely forced us to 12, and I appreciate that. And my final observation from this year, and I think this one's obvious, I don't know what it's going to be, but there's some type of change coming that is not relative to the college football playoff number. You know what I'm saying? We knew there was a change coming to 12. We knew it was on the horizon. It was on the calendar. We all know it was coming. But I think there's something else. I think there's something else coming. Mm-hmm. I don't think college football coaches like Kirby Smart talk like they do if they don't know something, right? They don't go to a microphone and say the world needs to see that. There's something about this needs to be fixed. And he wasn't talking about moving to 12. I think that's a lot of people were thinking about that's what he was talking about. That's wasn't what he was talking about. He was talking about college football players opting out of bowl games and making bowl games meaningless again, or like making them meaningful again somehow, some way. You have to change the calendar and make bowl games mean something again. So you don't have these things like what we had happen all offseason. All December, no one gave a shit unless there was a goddamn Pop-Tart walking around. Like, we got to do something about that. And I think that's obvious that's coming down the pipe. Hey, that boy Brooks, give him 3. All right, let's talk about early favorites in 2024 before we move on to this local hour because your boy got to use the bathroom. The list came out. I'm going to read them off to you. Georgia, the favorite, plus 350. Bama, plus 550. Ohio State, plus 800. Michigan, plus 900, as is Texas at plus 900. Oregon at plus 1,000. Ole Miss at plus 1,100. LSU at plus 1,600. I think Clemson rounding it out on the list at about plus 1,800 on the national title odds. Am I wrong for looking at next year and thinking it's like more wide open than ever before?
No,
I was just about to say that.
I don't feel good about any of those teams.
No, I think there's kind of this idea that, okay, you know, now that we've got a 12-team playoff, Georgia's going to get in. They're going to run the table every time because they'll never miss it. But I mean, I don't know how confident I would be in any of that. There's so much changing and there's so much roster of returning all of these teams that, and yes, Georgia has weathered that storm much better than other teams. But Bama's still there. Jalen Milroe's returning. So I mean, there's just so much right now. I mean, we're so far away out for it to be like to make legitimate predictions.
So if it's me, if I'm a gambler, if I'm just an addict, an absolute fiend, I'd be looking at these early plays as like, hey, let's find some value in the number, right?
Oregon.
Let's find some real value in the number.
Oregon's
and guess where the
value.
value in the number is right now? In my opinion, there's 3. Like, there's a couple I wouldn't touch. I wouldn't touch Ohio State with a 10-foot pole at plus 800. That makes 0 sense in my opinion. I wouldn't be out here touching LSU plus 1,600. Ain't no way I'd be messing around with that. Clemson, get the hell out of here. I wouldn't even feel great about putting money on Ole Miss. I really wouldn't. But here's where I would be circling the wagons, as we talked about pre-show. I'd be circling the wagons around these 3 names, Michigan, Texas, and Oregon. Here's why I'm circling Michigan. If Jim Harbaugh signs that contract, if J.J. McCarthy announces he's coming back, those odds drop drastically, okay? That plus 900 is going to go to plus 550 like that, and there goes your $450 of value on 1,000. All right, so I would be paying attention to that one. Texas, I think is good value at plus 900, despite the fact that they're coming into the SEC, but they return a lot, and you don't really know what's going to happen with them at the wide receiver position.
And you don't
Maybe
have to.
they find another
You don't have to
couple
win the SEC anymore. Texas can lose 2 games this year, and still, hey, you know, they're still a really good football team. We got to put them in, and then who knows what happens.
And then I'm looking at Oregon. I'm looking at Oregon as a first year in the Big Ten opportunity, and they're comprised as a roster, and they have the quarterback now with Dylan Gabriel. They're comprised as a roster to compete with programs like Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State and all those.
Absolutely agree with that.
I like all. I think those are all the 3 best value plays right now as it stands.
What's up?
Oh, never mind. I was going to say, who's a team not on the list that should be on the list, or we think eventually gets on that list?
DJ Lagway, freshman All-American, Florida. I'm just kidding. That's a joke.
Probably Oklahoma.
Yeah. Oklahoma's at plus 3,000,
I
I
thought
saw.
Oklahoma was the first one that came to mind.
Yeah, Oklahoma plus 3,000. All right, we have a whole nother hour coming up, loaded up for you right now, and it is our local hour. Stick around with us.
Welcome into Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These is dog takes. Can I talk that dog?
What's up? You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
I think we were one of the 4 best teams. If we just didn't have that one bad day, man, we're better than Team X who won national title Y. We just didn't get an opportunity. We got screwed. We got screwed by the college football playoff. If you were one of those people, and if you're one of those Georgia fans, you're not going to like me in the next 90 seconds. Okay, so just hold your britches, bite the mouthpiece. We'll be all right. Those were all things I heard from Georgia fans in my mentions the last 24, 48 hours. We should be in this. Oh, we had one bad day. Oh, we're better than this team. Oh, we beat the shit out of Michigan. Oh, there's no way Michigan would score 7 points against us. I heard it over and over and over again. And honestly, I do sympathize with you. I do sympathize with you because a 3-point loss kept you away from a chance at a 3-peat. And I understand that. I also sympathize with you because Vegas gaslights your ass every time they get an opportunity to by favoring you over the 2 teams that just played in the national title game. I understand. I definitely get, okay, why you feel that way. But I'm here to tell you right now, you already got your 12-team playoff this year. You had your round of 8. It was in the SEC championship game, and you had an opportunity to go to the Final Four. All right? That's what it was. And that's what you have to concede with. It's what you have to understand right now, right? However your brain operates with this new college football playoff, understand that this year is not your complaint because this year you had an opportunity at a playoff game. It was your SEC championship game. And anyone with a brain knew going into that football game, it was win you're in, lose you're hoping. And hoping ain't good for shit. And we found that out really, really quickly. This idea that, oh, we had a bad day. Oh, we're still the best team in college football. Like, I'm here to tell you that opportunity for having a bad day, that risk is still very much so there when you go to 12. Going to 12 college football playoff teams does not, ensure that you're not going to show up and lay an egg on 3rd and 2. It's not, because that's what you did. You did. And I hate to do this. I really, really hate to do this. But you had an opportunity against Alabama, and on 6 different 3rd and 2s or less, 4 of those 6, you walked off the field with the punt team coming on. All right? That's what you need to be mad at. And that's the opportunity that you need to be upset about. It's not that you got screwed out of a college football playoff this year, because you didn't. You had your playoff game, you lost it, you had a bad day. So how moving forward do you avoid bad days? That's the key here. That's the key for everyone. You can't show up in December and lay eggs. You can't do that this year. You won't be able to do that next year, and you won't be able to do that moving forward throughout the rest of the history of college football. Having a bad day in December will end your season, as it should. Okay, so that's where you need to place your anger, or place your disdain, or place your upsetness. And if you're one of those people, that's just, damn, man, it sucks we had a bad day. You're right. It does suck you had a bad day, and it cost you an opportunity to win a national championship. And that ain't changing next year in the middle of December. If you have a bad day, you're going home. And guess what? You're not going to be able to sit at home during the national title game and say we were better than these teams, because you weren't. You just weren't. You weren't that day. You might have been 6 months or 6 weeks from that day, but that's not the reality. The reality of the situation is you had to win it all or go home football game, and you lost. So you went home and then beat the absolute shit out of Florida State, those poor bastards. So that's my thing here, guys. Like, it hurts. It really does. It hurts to hear that truth, but that is the God's honest truth. You had a playoff game this year. You had an Elite 8 football game this year, and you lost it.
I think 2 things can be true at the same time. I think Georgia fans do have a right to be pissed off a little bit about how things unfolded and how things went, especially with the information that we know now, knowing that you did go on and beat Florida State the way that you did in the Orange Bowl, knowing that, yeah, you were banged up a little bit at the worst possible time in the season. 2 of your better offensive weapons were not 100%. But I think it also can be true that you probably didn't deserve to be in the college football playoff because you did lose that game. And let's be real. I mean, you and I kind of got into this a couple days ago about, let's be real. Georgia was a flawed football team this year. I mean,
Yeah.
we sat here and talked about it. The fans sat here and talked about it in the comment section every day about the flaws that they were concerned about with this team, regardless of them hanging 50 on Kentucky's head early in the year. Like, there were concerns about the interior defensive line and how that was going to have to show up later on down the road. And it didn't against Alabama, and it cost you in some of those football games. And the fact that your weapons were getting injured and that we weren't finding really a way to get this offensive momentum rolling consistently, and the offense was kind of stagnant at times and kind of up and down a little bit. Those were flaws of this football team. That's okay. Even with those flaws, you're a top 5 football team. You're one of the best teams in college football, and you probably should have had a chance at a national title. But both things can be true. You can be mad, but you also can accept the fact that you probably didn't deserve to be there.
Yeah, the chat's pissed. Horse shit. We deserve to be there. So this is my thing. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do next year? Let's say this year was next year. Let's say your Alabama and Georgia SEC championship game is not an SEC championship game. Let's say it's the second round of the college football playoff, and you just have a bad day, and you take your ass home with an L, and your season ends. Are you going to sit there at home and say, well, we just had a bad day, we're still the best team in college football? No, that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. It's not how it's ever worked. It's not how sports work. If you lose a playoff game, you lost. The better team won. And if that better team loses to another team, then transitive property says that team would have beat you. And that's how history remembers you. That's how history is going to remember you next year. That's how history is going to remember you the year after that, year after that, year after that. When we come to a win it all, win, go home, or win, move on, lose, go home type football game moving forward, if you lose that game, your season is over. There is no going to Twitter and say, bullshit, we deserve. No, you lost, and that sucks. How you lost, we spent an hour and 30 minutes talking about it on the film. Okay, so it's all there, but you don't get the opportunity or you don't have the right to go on social media and say we were one of the better teams, because that one day you weren't, and that one day was all that mattered, and that's how playoffs work.
This is one of the flaws of the college football playoff system, and it's nothing that you can never fix, but the teams that make the playoff is led up to subjective choices. Whereas the NFL, you can have a 10-win team. You can be a 10-win team, finish third in your division, and then a 7-9 team in the NFC South. I know the Buccaneers are 9-8, but it's an example. A 7-win team gets in over you, and no one ever complains about it. No one says, this is why we need to be in. When the Super Bowl is not close, you don't have people saying, oh, my God, this is why we need to be in, because it's left to a system. Now, I'm not saying that you need to adopt that system because you have way more than 32 teams in your league, but when you leave it up to subjectiveness and a group of people always deciding, you're always going to have people saying, they didn't get it right. This is why this other team should have been in. So you're never going to fix that problem. It's always going to happen.
I think there are copious amounts of examples of this in professional football too, like real playoffs that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, for frick's sake, the Braves feel this way. Like, Braves fans can't not feel this way about their Braves. But the fact that you got beat 4 out of 7 makes you, like, wear it a little bit better, right? You're not out here complaining about being cheated or deserving to win a World Series. But the fact of the matter is, you felt like you were one of the best baseball program or organizations in the sport last year, and you went home. And people ain't out here talking about getting robbed. Why? Because you were in a playoff game. Well, I've got to try to tell you, you were in a playoff game December 2nd.
And that's why I said the beauty of the 14 college football playoff was because you had pseudo playoff games in the regular season. Alabama's playoff started as soon as Texas beat them.
You say that's a beautiful thing about the playoff or the 14 playoff. I think that's the shitty thing about the 14 playoff.
Why?
Because at the end, we don't have the answers. We don't have all of the answers. We have a lot of this speculative bullshit where Georgia fans are out here talking about coulda, shoulda, woulda. We were better. But if that Alabama game were an Elite 8 football game, if it were labeled under college football playoff and you lost that football game, I guarantee you Georgia fans wouldn't be on Twitter talking about we're better than Michigan.
But you still have the speculation. Then you still have was Georgia better than Michigan or Washington? It's you can still use that argument. It's just saying that because there's not this strict guideline of, this is a true playoff game. It was a playoff game. It wasn't labeled as a playoff game.
I think we're talking to the not so smart fan who never thinks about it smartly. They think about it fanatically. And every time a fan in the current 14 playoff has a good team and they're left out of the 14 playoff, despite the fact that they lost the pseudo playoff game, they still feel like they got cheated because they were ranked 6th when they felt like they should have been ranked 4th, and they only take 4.
Yeah, I mean, then that's, like I said, that's the flaw of the college. If you had the
current college football playoff.
Yeah, if you had an automatic bid where the top 5 conference champions were in, you would still be having people saying, "Oh, I think Georgia's a better team," and they might be right, and you might not still have your answers, but you have a rigid system.
I just didn't like it. I don't like the. Well, we could have beat them.
I do hate the
agree.
woe is me.
I don't like it either.
And
I don't
look,
think you need to do that.
For goodness sake, you just won 2 of them in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. It's not like the world is falling or anything like that. Like, the world is not ending. You are the odds-on favorite to do it again next year. Like, people are still
Heavy odds-on favorite.
Heavy odds-on favor. You have everything going for you. I mean, you got Mike Bobo year 2. You got Carson Beck year 2. You got guys returning, offensive linemen returning. Like, goodness gracious, you're in a prime position to do it again. Not many teams can say that for this upcoming season.
Every Georgia fan that I see on social media moving forward talking about the 2023 season and about how you should have won a national title and you should have been able to compete for one, I'm just going to reply to you 2 for 6. 2 for 6. That's it. 2 for 6. You go 2 for 6 on third and less than 2, you are not a national title winner. I don't care. Just we talked about it with Washington. Washington had a bad day. Ain't nobody out here asking for Washington to get a chance at a rematch. Okay, playing best 2 out of 3. It's not how football works. You had a bad day, you take your ass home. And that's how it happens. Okay, and that sucks, and I hate that. But that's sport, all right? That's this sport. That's how this sport operates. The rest of them might get a chance at a best of 7. You don't, because football is football. And any given Sunday, any given Saturday. It ain't any given Saturday, see you again in 30 days, and I will see if I got a better chance at it. That's not how this works. Welcome in to Talk That Dog, Jayden Maiava, the addition at the quarterback spot for Georgia. We're going to talk a little bit about him. We're also going to talk about what that addition means for Gunnar Stockton. I think that was the obvious pivot point for a lot of fans today when they saw this news, or yesterday when they saw this news that Georgia was going to be adding this quarterback via the transfer portal. What does that mean for Gunnar Stockton? We'll be talking about it tonight. A couple of my guys absolutely balling out already before they even step foot on campus at the University of Georgia. We'll talk about that. We'll give a little pat on the back here today. We're going to give them 3 things that Georgia needs to get better at moving into the 2024 season. And one former Georgia Bulldog did this thing better than the other former Georgia Bulldogs that you guys despise and absolutely cook on social media. So we're going to talk about that today. I have film observations because I finally gave Patreon the All-22 breakdown of the Florida State Orange Bowl. So feel free to not only join patreon.com/Brooks Austin for that, but also, feel free to hang around for our film observations today. And we're going to talk about whether or not the Georgia staff is safe. But before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. If you run over to prizepicks.com and use promo code Brooks today, and you are a new user, you will get 100% deposit match up to $100. What does that mean? You put up to $100 in your account and you use promo code Brooks, they will instantly match it up to 100% of what you put into that deposit. Run over, use promo code Brooks today. Also, check out our friends at the Athletic Collection. All these posters you see made around these, or in the studio around here today, can and will be made available to you over at the Athletic Collection. Those are an NIL play, so if you want to have an opportunity to get in there and support some of those fine Georgia athletes, feel free to do so at the Athletic Collection. Again, the link to that is in the description of this video. Just general thoughts before we wrap a bow on me telling the Georgia fan base, shut up, you lost.
Sometimes a little bit of truth hurts. Now, I mean, I understand. I completely understand where Georgia fans are coming from. I think you do, like I said, I think you do have somewhat of a right to be pissed off about how things unfolded. But, I mean, just didn't go that way sometimes,
I think if you really want to have the legit argument that you got screwed, you could say that wasn't a catch. They shouldn't have scored on that drive.
Correct.
We win. That's your argument.
If you want to play victim, do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's your argument, because then you win that game, you're in the playoffs. So there's the true argument where I think you can really say you don't have a legit.
Can you do that?
You can.
4th and 3, first quarter. We can be out here saying if that's an incomplete pass, Georgia wins that football game. We can do that. We can stretch truth like that.
I think if you just put it based on the fact he lost by 3.
That's some serious butterfly effect there.
It's a much better argument than saying the group of old guys left us out.
That's true. That's true. It's much more realistic than the screw the old white dudes.
Yeah.
Hey, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, rate, review, and let's talk about Jayden Maiava, the transfer from UNLV, coming to the University of Georgia, 6'4", 210 pounds, built like the mold. You know what I mean? Like they clearly have a mold at the quarterback position that they recruit at. You know, not that they sign everybody that's built and looks like this, but a lot of their guys, they want big, strong, fast. All right, they want big, strong, fast at every single position. And 6'4", 210 checks that box. He started 14 games as a redshirt freshman at UNLV this last year. Chose Georgia over USC and some other programs. Actually had an opportunity to talk to his offensive coordinator today. When UNLV's offensive coordinator got to UNLV, our guy Jayden Maiava was on practice squad. He was barely like getting invited to quarterback meetings. He was not in the immediate future at all of the quarterback room. Within 12 months, he's an All-American freshman talent. Okay, he performs, throws for 3,000 yards in his first year starting, 63.5% completion percentage, and again is an All-American on like a freshman All-American. And here's my thing about this. If I see a freshman All-American play at UNLV, into the portal, go to Georgia, that ain't no guy that's just out here trying to retire from football. That's a guy in a path, to me, that looks like I was critically missed in high school. People underrated me like nobody's business. I was from the state of Nevada. Nobody cared about me. I'm going to go prove them wrong. I spent 24 months proving them wrong. All right, that's what I do. And then I prove people wrong, and now I have opportunities. Those opportunities are not to go to Athens and sit on the bench, okay? Those opportunities that he's chasing looks to me like Jayden Maiava is out here to prove to the world that he is indeed a Power 5 starter at the quarterback position. So when I tell you that, you should know, Georgia fan, that Jayden Maiava ain't coming to Athens to be some backup for 3 years that he has left of his eligibility. No, this is a guy who had a starting job, who wants a bigger starting job. This is very much so J.R. Reed. J.R. Reed started his freshman year at Tulsa playing special teams, worked his last 6 games as starting into the role at the safety position and said, you know what? Appreciate you, Tulsa. I'm better than this. I know I am. I'm going to go prove it. Jayden Maiava ain't coming to Georgia to sit on no pine for 3 years. I'm telling you that right now. He is coming to Georgia because he has either been led to believe that he has an opportunity to win a job, or he believes he's going to win a job. Those are the only 2 options, okay? And I'm not saying the first one happened, but I'm saying the second one's definitely on the table. And whether or not the first one happened does not mean the second one is not true. The second one is 100% true. This kid thinks he's coming to Georgia to be an SEC starter at the quarterback position. I don't know how you could look at this and see it any other way, boys.
Here's my question. This is what I want to know. Why was Georgia and USC the only ones on this kid then? Like, if he, knowing what he did at UNLV, knowing that he was this freshman All-American value player, why was nobody else gunning after this kid? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, the amount of teams that need a quality starter from the transfer portal that continue to seek after them, why was this kid's name never thrown into the mix for anybody else? But then it's like Georgia, who's not really in desperate need of a quarterback, is like, oh, we'll go get this kid that just lit it up at UNLV and now is garnering attention from everybody else, is freaking built like the mold of a college quarterback that everybody wants, and we'll happily take him. I don't understand how that happens.
It's a great question. And if I remember correctly, yeah, he only entered the portal 8 days ago.
Okay.
This is tampering.
I wasn't going to say it.
That's what it is. It's tampering. From both USC and Georgia, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure.
This lines up with the timeline of Georgia both losing Brock Vandegrift and USC losing out on Will Howard and having Malachi Nelson transfer out.
Losing Raiola.
And losing Raiola.
Because, I mean, if Raiola signs, you don't need this.
Yes.
No, you don't.
Correct.
You have 4 scholarship guys in the room. And I think that's what a lot of people went back to today was the quotes from Kirby during National Signing Day that we tweeted out immediately. Said, hey, that dude's going to take another quarterback. I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know who it's going to be. But I wrote it down in my notes. Do y'all remember my man from Nevada? We looked him up pregame or pre-show. They took a transfer quarterback out of Nevada a couple years ago that ended up coming on and being a walk-on. But he was like a Division I starter that came back to Georgia to be a quarterback. And that, to me, smelled like we just need some depth. Mm-hmm. This don't smell like a depth play. This smells like we have an opportunity to maybe find a new starter next year after Carson leaves if this happens to be the guy. That's what it looks like to me on paper.
No, it definitely does. I mean, he's got more starts than half of the room already as a D1 player. My question is, when you're bringing in these uber competitive guys, like you've got 4 guys in that room now that are super competitive, super talented. You only have one starting quarterback position. Does bringing in super competitive and super talented guys to bolster depth eventually hurt your depth? Because you have to imagine if one of these guys wins a starting position in 2 years, say it is Maiava, say he wins a position. I don't think Puglisi sticks around. I don't think Gunnar Stockton sticks around.
That's the one I would be paying attention to, obviously. And that's where immediately, that's the obvious, right? They land this kid. He's got 3 years of eligibility. He comes out of high school in the same class as Gunnar, I'm pretty sure, right? So same levels of eligibility left. Gunner's probably got an extra one because he hadn't played. All this good stuff going on. And your immediate reaction has to be like, oh, this is either about Kirby's comments of getting to 4 and this is just a depth play. This is just a guy that's coming onto the roster to fill out the scholarship limits, or this is insurance, right? And I think the answer is yes. Yes, this is insurance. This is insurance on twofold. Okay, a little bit what you're talking about. Insurance number 1, we got to make sure Gunnar is pushed, like consistently pushed. The last thing you want to happen to this roster is what happened for 2 years at the quarterback position where Jake Fromm just gets to be Jake Fromm. And Jake Fromm never has to get better, and Jake Fromm never has to show up to practice and work hard. And I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying Jake Fromm freshman year probably looked, felt, and smelt a whole lot different than Jake Fromm junior year, when he had the whole world promised to him and he gets to Rocky Top his way out of Tennessee's press conferences, right? So much easier to not get up and do the 5 a.m. Selective workout when you're doing that. But when you're always being pushed, always looking over your shoulder, always asking, hey, this 6'4", 210-pound dude from Nevada out here got a chooch on him. Like, if those are the things that I'm worried about, I'm going to be a better football player. I'm going to compete better in practice. So it's insurance for that one and first and foremost. But it's also insurance in case Gunnar Stockton doesn't turn into the guy, right? And I think you had to protect yourself from that, because what happens if Gunnar isn't the guy next year and all of a sudden, what are you supposed to turn? You're supposed to turn to Ryan Puglisi in the middle of the year, right? I think it was an insurance play on both fronts. It was an insurance play from, we're going to make sure Gunnar Stockton continues to work his butt off, but we're also going to make sure if Gunnar Stockton isn't the guy that we thought he was coming out of high school, that we're going to make something happen about this.
Took the words right out of my mouth. That's the point that I was about to hammer home right there, is exactly what you were mentioning, of like, just for the pure fact that he's going to bring in another level of competition, another guy that's going to go out there and compete for reps. I think that's added value immediately to this roster. Whether he ever plays a snap of football for Georgia in his career, that's one thing, but the fact that he's going to be out there in the spring, you're going to see him throughout probably the next 2 years at least, like that's important to the roster itself.
I agree.
So I haven't watched all 22 of it. I just watched it from the box, and I have studied this Maiava kid. So let me tell you a little bit about both of them. Maiava, stiff front side, like real stiff front side. Almost looks like it hurts when he throws the football. It's not very fluid, but he does have a lot of horsepower. Okay, honestly, his best stuff, in my opinion, is when he's moving, because then he can't be stiff. When he's on the run, it's just his arm talent, and his arm talent is elite. Like, he's got a good stroke. Lower half wise is really, really tough. It's like real stiff. And then the other guy, Gunnar, I think Gunner's going to be a really, really, really good college quarterback, because I think Gunner's going to be a really, really competitive runner of the football. Whether or not he develops into an elite passer, that is very much so yet to be determined, because I think he's going to have to overcome some limitations with regards to arm talent. I think he can throw it 70 yards. I don't think that's the problem. But when you will go back and watch that Florida State game, and you guys tell me if you thought this way. When Gunnar Stockton goes to throw the football, it looks like he's trying to reach back and grab everything he can from it. And then he rips it, right? It looks like this big stretch and then go, right? It's stiff and muscly to me. And I think those things, once they get cleaned up, we'll see the passer develop into, an elite passer. But man, like y'all are so, I think Georgia's fan base is setting this guy up for failure with comments like Gunnar can be Stetson 2.0, things like, Gunner's going to be this, Gunner's going to be that. Like, I think y'all got to wait. And see. Like, why were y'all so cautious with I don't know if Carson's going to be a guy, and yet everyone's already guaranteeing Gunner's going to be. They were ranked relatively similar coming out of high school. Like Gunner, I don't think a lot of people remember. I think Gunner finished 17th overall in the quarterback rankings coming out of high school. Like he was a 5-star early on in his career, and then it kind of tapered off to where he was, at the conclusion. I'm not saying rankings matter, and all that matters is rankings, but like y'all talking about Gunner like he's a known commodity, and I just don't know if that's the case. And I think this action kind of proved if Gunner Stockton was guaranteed to be the next great Georgia starting quarterback, they don't do what they just did. If they known for the last 18 months that this next one's going to be the next one, I don't think they do what they did today.
And I mean, this is the fault of Georgia fans or just college football fans in general. You get you saw the same thing with Joe Milton. Joe Milton was practically a shoo-in for the Heisman this time last year. So it's just the hope of, hey, this guy we have on the bench is even better than the guy we have now. Just wait till he gets in. They did it with Carson Beck in 2021. They did it with Carson Beck in 2022. They did it with Justin Fields.
Did they?
Oh, my God, yeah.
Carson got love like
this? They
had
pitchforks ready when Stetson got announced as a starter.
They wanted Vandergrift. They weren't saying go to Beck.
No, they wanted Beck.
Those fans were talking about Vandergrift.
During that 2020 season, before JT Daniels got onto the field, it was all about, let's just see what Carson Beck has because we want to see that kid. We want to see the high-profile recruit we just got.
I mean, I remember in 2021 when it was the whole JT Daniels is dealing with a lat injury. He might not start. It was, here comes Carson Beck, here we go. And then they announced Stetson Bennett, and the fan base exploded. So, I mean, they've always kind of hyped up the next. You saw it this year with Brock Vandagriff. Hey, Brock Vandagriff's the guy. Brock Vandagriff's at Kentucky right now.
And here's what I've never understood about it. Like, it's okay to talk about rankings with Gunner Stockton because that's basically all we have to go off of right now during his time at Georgia. We don't get to see Gunner Stockton at practice or anything like that. We get to see the throws that he made against FSU during the bowl game, and that's really about it during his career. But this infatuation with players like Gunner Stockton who have not exactly gotten to capitalize off of their college football careers yet, when you haven't seen anything, it just doesn't make any sense to me about how you can confidently come out here and say for a fact that this is the guy that's going to take over the UGA's football program. He's going to be the next great one. When you're already looking at one right now, when you're already looking at Carson Beck, who, I mean, heck, if he had gotten in the playoff, he would have shattered Stetson Bennett's passing yards record. He would have absolutely marched past through it, and he would have had another year to do it again this next year, and he's probably going to break it this next year if I had to guess. Because I mean, and we'll get into it later. This guy can still improve. Carson Beck can still improve, and you just got an incredible season from him.
Interesting nonetheless. I think it opens you to these discussions, which is part of the reason that I think they did it. I think they want uncomfortability walking around that building. I don't think they want people to feel safe at all.
No, yeah. I mean, to your point, 2019 with Jake Fromm. When Justin Fields left, it was Jake Fromm and Stetson Bennett, number 22, wearing Stetson Bennett. So basically, like it was like you said, Jake Fromm. Not that he was anything less or he tried any less hard, but he didn't have anyone breathing down his neck, and you saw that in the way he played. So I think this is what Kirby Smart saw that and said, we're never doing that again. He immediately went in the transfer portal, got Jamie Newman, JT Daniels. Obviously, that didn't turn out how it did, but he's been stacking quarterback talent ever since then.
I just hope Jayden Maiava and his family and his camp understand that you will never be the favorite here. I'm going to tell you that right now. The idea that Georgia fans are going to want – the majority of Georgia fans are going to want you to start over Gunner Stockton, it's not going to happen. So that's going to be a cloud hanging over this one.
Yeah.
And, again, it's not the majority. I don't think so. But it is the loudness. This is the overwhelming, loud ones. The loud ones will be on Twitter talking about how you stole an opportunity from Gunner Stockton if you win this job. And even if you do win this job, they're going to be, oh, he only threw for 285 today? We got to see what Gunner Stockton's got. We got to. This guy's stealing opportunities from us to get a look at the other guy. So, I talked to some guys today, and granted, they're biased, but, they just got done coaching the kid out there at the UNLV that think, this Maiava kid's on par with even what Beck's got going on, is what they believe. They think this guy's exceptionally talented. And he's got a lot of horsepower. He is a big physical dude, that is for sure. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens when that battle ultimately happens. But we'll kind of know who's got the head start on him. We will. Yeah. Whoever's the backup next fall will have a start. You'll have the head start. We've seen Kirby Smart go through a plethora of quarterback battles. The only backup to ever lose the impending starting job was Carson Beck, right? That's it.
Yeah.
If you were the two, once the one left, you became the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Whoever wins the backup job this fall, that's who's going to win the job in 2025.
Yeah.
That is rain. Jesus. That is rain outside right now. It is coming down. Hey, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like, subscribing, rate, and reviewing. The portal officially closed last week, and the 48-hour moratorium has officially closed, which you would imagine means that the transfer portal entries are done. They have come to a conclusion. So we felt it necessary to ask two questions. Biggest surprise in terms of a loss, and biggest surprise in terms of, damn, they kept that kid around. That's interesting. What do you got?
Biggest surprise in regards to a loss for me was A.J. Harris. Just weird seeing a first-year guy that got playing time, that saw the field, end up bouncing off to the portal and heading elsewhere. I thought that was just very surprising to me, especially everything that we heard about A.J. Harris leading up into the season, how you continue to see a little bit more of him throughout the year, getting opportunities to a freshman. That was a little odd to me to see him bounce after just 1 year at UGA. Biggest surprise, retention for me, and this one might be a little surprising, Ja'Cory Thomas, in my opinion, is a surprising one that didn't enter the portal because this is now, he spent 2 years on the roster now, haven't seen much of him. Now we're going into this next season playing safety, and even this next year, it doesn't really sound like there's a fit for Ja'Cory Thomas because David Daniel Sisavon and Dan Jackson are looking like the guys that are going to be the headliners at that other spot aside from Malachi Starks. Even KJ Bolden, he's getting thrown in the mix. No one's mentioning Ja'Cory Thomas.
Was a Will Muschamp take coming out of high school. Came up to camp, ran around for a couple of days. They silent offered him, meaning like, hey, this offer's committable, but you're not allowed to tell anybody until you commit because we don't want nobody else finding your ass. We want you. We don't want nobody else finding you. So that, if y'all remember that one was like all of a sudden, boom, Ja'Cory Thomas. I remember I was still working construction at the time. That's how long ago it was. I was still working construction at the time, and I pull up to our construction yard. And I have to, start calling sources. I'm like, yo, is this a PWO? I've never heard of this kid. Who is this guy? I don't even think he had a 24/7 profile at the time. And they're like, nah, dude, go watch the tape. I'm like, all right, we'll find out. Yeah, he's a dude. But you're right. I'm surprised that guy hasn't left. Were you surprised by any losses, any additions?
Yeah, I think the obvious one is Pop.
Yeah.
That's a starting linebacker, Butkus Award semifinalist, started for you 2 years. To see him go is shocking. But the other one I had, because that's kind of the obvious answer, Mekhi Muse. Yeah. Your number one guy on special teams, got some run at the slot spot in garbage time, and even in big games. He's had a couple of catches in that Alabama game. But just kind of interesting to see that one go. Makes sense, though, but –
I had a conversation with Mekhi right as he entered his name in the portal, and I don't know if that was as much about getting a scholarship as it was about getting an opportunity to actually be a real position player. Georgia was going to ask him to spend another year basically doing mop-up duty at receiver, but being the guy in the return game, and I just don't think that's what he was interested in doing. I think he wants to be a position player. So a lot of people wondering whether or not that was a scholarship thing. I don't know if that were necessarily the case, especially for a kid who I think had a 3.8 coming out of high school at Central Gwinnett. So not really struggling for the Zell Mill, I would imagine, at the University of Georgia up there, is that football player. I was kind of surprised. I know we've already hit on the ones that they've lost. I wasn't surprised to see Marvin Jones Jr. hit the portal. Was not surprised to see Nyland Green hit the portal. Was not surprised to see Xavier Sorey hit the portal. I don't think there were a lot of guys that we didn't expect, unless other than the ones that you guys mentioned. I'm shocked that they kept a hold of Arian Smith.
Yeah,
I thought Arian Smith there for a while was going to be one of these names that we saw pop into the portal. But I think the way that they closed that, right, the way that they removed that fear was force-feeding him, despite the fact that he took every single one of those off the damn face mask. Force-feeding him opportunities late in the season might have kept the interest there for number 11.
Yeah, another guy I was surprised they returned was David Daniel Sisavon. And I think it's kind of been that way for a while now. He's kind of in line for a starting – or he's competing for a starting spot here, but it just feels like I feel like he's a talented enough guy to where he could have gotten run somewhere else by now.
I don't know if David Daniel ever starts at Georgia, but they couldn't practice without him.
Right.
They can't practice without him.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if a safety goes down middle of the season? You're going to pull up a freshman and let him run practice squad? I mean, not even like down for the count. I'm talking about like, hey, Malachi's got a bum finger. We don't need to have him practice today. Okay? Who you got? There's nobody left. There's nobody left that knows the system. Okay? David Daniel Sisavon has been, man, like this. Y'all, we talked about damn good dogs the other day. If you got to ask, the answer is no. This is a version of a damn good dog, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. David Daniel Sisavon was the first commit in the class of 2020. The first. Wire to wire. He's the last one to do it. Okay? Since then, every single recruitment class, the first commit, guaranteed to decommit. Every single time. I think this class, it was Landon Thomas. Okay? Guaranteed to decommit. Not David Daniel. Okay, David Daniel gets to Georgia, and like you said, never sniffs it. I mean, the closest thing he's gotten to playing time, I think, is when Major Burns went down against Florida a couple years ago. That's like it. Okay, so David Daniel had a long run at things, and you're right, the fact that he has stuck around this roster and stuck around this team shows you, A, how much he means or how much he loves the University of Georgia, but B, just how good you are at your retention rates. Yeah. That's nuts.
Mm-hmm. I've got one more that's kind of not super serious, but what the hell is keeping Brett Thorson on this team? I mean, the man has punted 12 times last season.
I think, yeah.
I think,
so much so that wants to transfer to tight end now.
I don't know Jack Diddley about the kicking game or how they go about scouting kicking, but isn't that just distance and hang time?
Pretty much.
For a scouting perspective?
Oh, yeah.
Probably distance.
How far he kick it, how long that bitch in the air.
Yeah, or in time to kick.
Yeah.
Like, how long is your delivery on your kick?
Yeah, I mean, Jake.
So, do we need to see game reps? Do we need to see game tape on a punter?
I mean, Jake Carmato didn't necessarily punt a whole lot during his time at Georgia either, but all NFL scouts had to see was him going out to the NFL Combine, booming the sucker into the roof. I was like, okay, yep, there's our next punter. I mean, I do think it is funny, though, that, as good as Thorson is when you do have to call on him, he isn't even up for any of the national awards like the Ray Guy Award because he doesn't punt enough times.
Boots.
He's not even eligible for it.
Jake Camarda, one of the more irrationally confident humans I've ever been around.
That checks out.
Nice guy.
Heard he's got a good golf game.
I heard it's okay. I heard the reason people think it's so good is because he talks about how good it is.
Spoken like a true golfer.
Yeah, I played with somebody who'd played with it, and I'm like, I heard Camarda likes to swing the sticks. And he's like, Camarda's all right. Camarda just likes to tell you he's good. I'm like, okay. Play for Skins? I'm just kidding. I think, the roster has finally settled. I think some of those surprises were obvious. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and rate, and review, and all that good stuff. Any more potential additions? That's a question that you guys were asking me pre-show, and I'll go ahead and lay it down for you. There's some Jake Pope smoke. Jake Pope, former safety out of Buford High School. Coming out of high school, it was Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and UNC. I spoke to the Pope camp the last 48 hours. Georgia's been in contact. Now, whether that means that this is a Georgia landing spot, I don't know. I don't know that to be the case. I would presume Jake Pope is leaving Alabama for playing time.
Yeah.
Going from Alabama to Georgia get playing time doesn't exactly make sense to me.
That's my point exactly. Not saying he can't play at Georgia. I'm just saying
the path's not any easier.
No. In fact, I would argue it's harder.
Yeah.
I would argue it's harder. I don't know about that one unless we just want to be close to home. But go to UNC, Bubba. Go to Notre Dame. Go to Ohio State. They need you. Those are Power 5 teams that need you. Need you now. They're gonna let you play. Granted, all that being said, might end up at Georgia. I don't know. We'll see. So there you go. That's the only real smoke around. Hey, that guy's still in the portal. That guy might end up here. Pay attention. My guys already balling. Y'all seen this?
Mm-hmm.
Twitter was ablaze. Twitter was on fire for my guy. for my guy, Nate Frazier, Nathaniel, as we shall call him. Nathaniel. Okay, out here just putting it on display. Out here putting it on display, making Brooksy look so goddamn right. Okay, so goddamn right. Did it all. Showed the versatility, showed the explosiveness, showed the twitch, showed the gas, showed the brakes.
He showed some love to some past UGA greats. You see that?
No, I didn't.
He did the Sony Michel jazz hand celebrations, and then
Hell
he tweeted
yeah.
about it today. He said, I had to show my respects to the past greats, and he tagged like Todd Gurley too, Nick Chubb. So
Hell yeah.
I think Georgia fans are really going to love this one.
This guy gets it, man.
Yeah, this guy definitely gets it.
This is my guy. This is my guy, 4.70. 4.70 on the feed. Only 2 higher ranked players in the class, KJ Bolden and our man Ellis Robinson. That's it. We were big on Nate Frazier. And to watch him ball out in that Adidas All-American game, major key. Also major key, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing with Jordan Thomas? You know what? I don't even feel like I'm allowed to pat myself on the back for Jordan Thomas. I really don't. And honestly, when I look at it, I want to look at the industry and be like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Every single time through the history of rankings, that dude's a 5-star. I told you before the show, I love Jordan Hall. I think Jordan Hall's going to be a really good football player. How in the hell is Jordan Hall a 5-star and this kid's ranked outside the 180? That don't make no sense. This guy's 6'5", 305, moves like a bear. I mean, it's nuts. And he was out there in every single practice video I saw, Jordan Thomas out here just doing folks up out there in San Antonio.
Yeah, quite a few guys doing some work in the All-American games a couple weeks ago from Georgia.
Unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity to go this year. And I just, with how, it's a first world problem, with how often Georgia's playing well into December and into January, last year I took 10 days away from the house with my wife having a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old.
Light work.
Buddy, when I got home, oh my God, I'm surprised she was still here. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised they didn't just pick up the house and leave and go somewhere. Like, it's, God rest her soul. I couldn't do that to her again this year, and that's why we passed on. Oh, God rest her soul.
I was like, whoa.
God bless her soul.
She died.
God bless her soul is the saying. Anyways, God bless her soul. I couldn't do that to her this year, so we took San Antonio off and Austin off, which, I don't know how much fun.
We'll get our redemption this next year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to go hard in the paint. You guys are. You guys are going to go hard in the paint in Austin this year. We're going to have a film guy fiesta down there on 6th Street. So, yeah, if you want to find somebody, find us down there. We're going to have a good time. But, yeah, my guys already balling out. Just can't help but be right every once in a while.
Hey,
you know?
Don't you just love being right?
Hey, learn football or die. Learn football or die.
That shirt needs to be made.
Oh, we're making them right now. The merch store is going through a not a rebranding, but a relocation. So, yeah, the merch store is up. If you want a 2% shoot shirt, those are available right now. I'm going to go pick them up probably next week. So me and the boys are going to be dipped out in those. We're definitely going to get a Learn Football or Die shirt made as soon as Miss Jen settles down. She's a little bit hectic right now. I don't want to be throwing too much at her.
No doubt.
All right, 3 things Georgia needs to get better at next year. Who wants to go first?
Are we going through all 3 or just doing 1?
No, we're going to give them 3.
I can go first.
Okay.
Smacking,
Just 1 second.
Shit.
smacking the home run hitters this next year.
Damn it.
I want to specify this, though. I don't just mean hitting. Georgia was very explosive this year on offense. Like, you look at the numbers, they were top 15 in 30-plus, 40-plus yard plays. They were top 5, I believe, in 20-plus yard plays. I think they were second in 10-plus yard plays. So, like, they were an explosive offense. But when I mean smacking home run hitters, I mean you hit a 60-yard tutty. I mean quick scores. I feel like that was
Big
something
guy.
I feel like that was something that was kind of lacking from this offense this past year. There was never any of those quick hitters at Georgia.
Several years, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like in 2022 they were there, but just maybe not in abundance. But like when you needed them, I feel like you got them.
Oh yeah, Bowers had a couple. Aaron Smith had one. I'm wrong. You're right.
So next year I would like to see that. I would like to see like some quick hitters, some quick scores from the offense. Don't take this one the wrong way, but Carson Beck needs to improve, and I say that in this sense of. I think I said this before on the show. I felt like there's still something missing from Carson Beck's game. Like when I watched him on Saturdays, yes, it was impressive. It was a joy to watch, and he's a great quarterback. But I still feel like there was this
traits.
Yeah, like I just felt like there was this aspect of Carson. Like we're not getting the full picture here, and I feel like when we do, when we get into this 2024 season, I think we are going to get that version of Carson Beck because he does have a full season under his belt. He'll have another spring practice and whatnot. I think that's what we're going to get. So I'd like to see Carson Beck improve just to see what it looks like, just to see what a fully on display Carson Beck 15 number 1 starter looks like. And then I think that the X receiver position needs to finally take a step up. I think that needs to be one that improves, whether it be Colby Young. Would like to see it be Ra Thomas, and even Dominic Love and Ra Thomas. I think you could put together in this aspect of needs to improve because they came in bolstering high-flying names from the transfer portal, and I think we got a little bit of a taste of what they can do, but I really like to see those two guys really take a step forward.
Just got a little bump. We want the full line. What you got going on?
I get to go. Damn.
You already got my deep ball catch rate.
I shouldn't have said anything. Just started rattling them off.
I think hey, we got to hit our deep shots. I think that's correct. But I think most importantly, the 4 or 5 times this year where it's like, damn, that dude is not only wide open, but there's nobody in front of him. I think of a couple to Oscar Delp, one against Auburn. I think of one against Vanderbilt. There's a couple of these football plays very early on, a couple of Darian Smith. He missed one of Jackson Meeks early on in the season. A couple of those, 6, 7 balls, you hit 4 or 5 of those, I think we have a totally different discussion on what it feels like to be an explosive passing offense for Georgia this year, even though they were in the top 15. I think you hit a couple of those that are runners, not just like great explosive plays, but they might turn into 60, 70-yarders. Your explosive drive rates and your explosive efficiency numbers go up dramatically. So obviously I think you got to get better at that. You hit on that one. I think first possession scores defensively were a problem this year, and it didn't cost you any football games. The one you lost, they actually stopped the opponent on the first series, but you can't just be getting, walked down the field like they were this year. At some point, slow starts like that are going to come back to haunt you. And the last one, I'm going to leave for last. So we're going to give them 2, and we're going to finish up 3 because I want to save the last one for last because I think it's the most important one.
Okay. So the first one I have is your interior defensive line needs to get better. You weren't bad by any stretch this year, but you look back at 2022. 2021 is kind of an unattainable standard. You had 3 first-round picks on the interior D-line. But to just be a surefire, no one is going to run the ball on us. We're not going to get pushed around at all. I think that's what you kind of need to get more back to. You weren't necessarily that all the time in 2023. Then I have the pass rush. I think there were a lot of times this year where a lot of guys were like, why he's got 4 or 5 seconds to throw. You don't have that true guy who can just go out and get him now. You kind of need to develop that guy to – someone who can just peel their ears back and go get the quarterback. And then the third one I have not playing from behind. It felt like almost every SEC game this year with the exception of Alabama and Kentucky, and not even Alabama because they jumped out to such a lead after the first score, but it just felt like Georgia was playing from behind for most of the first quarter, a good bit of the first half. You can't do that, especially with this upcoming schedule.
All right, we forgot to give Jay Will 3, so we'll give them both. Hey, give them 3. The last and most important area of improvement that Georgia needs, and it is so obvious, they just got to get better at this one thing, and it's not going to mean as much now that divisions are gone, but you'll still probably see them in Atlanta. You got to get better at beating Alabama. Yeah. I think that's clear. I mean, whether it's for seeding in the next future years or whether it's in the semifinal or whether it's in the first round, I don't know when it's going to be, but you have got to get better at beating Alabama. I mean, it's just the bottom line. And it's not, contemplate whether or not I should reveal this story. I spoke to a buddy of mine who also happens to do a job very similar to me about the SEC championship game. And I talked to him about it before the game. And what he told me was that he was talking to a former Georgia player who had beaten Alabama. And that former Georgia player told him very simply, this game has nothing to do with great players. This game has nothing to do with, which coaching staff's going to do a better job. This game has everything to do with physicality, aggression, and line of scrimmage. Whoever comes out and asserts their will first, that team will win. And if you watch that football game against Alabama in 2022 when you won a national title, you whipped their ass in the fourth quarter. You rolled on them. That's exactly what Nick Saban told Kirby Smart when he met him at half-field, when he lost the national title. You guys whipped our ass in the fourth quarter. It has got to be a physical nature. You cannot go out into these football games, we're gonna try to keep everything in front, or we're gonna try to dink and dunk, or we're gonna try to get by right? It can't be any of that. If you're going to beat Alabama moving forward, it's because you had the mentality that you're going to go out there and punch them in the face and beat their ass for 4 quarters. And that's it. And if any portion of your game plan has any type of doubt or any type of maybe we can just do this, then you're going to lose. But if your game plan is we're going to do this, we're going to attack this, and we're going to win this way, you might have a chance mentally to get it done. But I think that's the most clear and obvious, like, hey, this has got to improve. It's the ability to beat Bama consistently.
And I mean, there is, whether you want to admit it or not, there is some subconscious mental block. It seems when
maybe
Alabama
not
comes
on the
to town.
roster, but definitely within the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, you could even argue within the coaching staff. Like, there's been a numerous amount of times where it's like, it seems kind of like Georgia's just playing not to lose here. Whereas in 2022 national championship, it was let it go, just go out and beat the hell out of these guys. So I think that is something that Georgia needs to get better. I mean, it's obvious. They're Kirby Smart's 1-4, 1-5 against Nick Sabin. So
he's like 4 of his 12 career losses.
Yeah.
I think the big difference now is like the first 3 losses, like when you lost to him in 2017, when you lost to him in 2018, and then when you lost to him in 2020. I think everybody kind of knew that Alabama had the better football team. Everybody felt like Alabama was more talented than Georgia. Since 2021, everybody's felt like Georgia has had the most talented roster and has been better than Alabama. I mean, without a doubt, this last year, everybody felt like Georgia was more talented than Alabama, and that's why it's starting to get a little frustrating. Now, I know you beat them the last time prior to this one, but still, like losing to them this year, it was like, why are we still doing this? Because we are better than them. We are, without a doubt, head and shoulders down below. Like, it feels like we are the better football team, but it seems like there's still just something holding us back.
I mean, it's been, with the exception of South Carolina in 2019, I can't think of a time where you can look at a loss of Kirby Smart and say the better team didn't win that day. Like 2019 LSU,
you
better
have to
team.
go back 2018 LSU on the road.
2019 LSU, they're a better team. 2020 Bama, they are the better team. 2021 Bama, that's the other one where you could probably say Georgia.
Florida got you in 2020, but were they the better team?
I think they were the better team there.
At that point in
Kyle
the season.
Trash, Kyle Pitts.
And I mean, you look at all the not opt-outs, but COVID injuries. I mean, Florida was definitely the better team in that game.
Yeah, that's a solid point. But those are my 3. Get better at beating Bama. I got a question. Is A.D. Mitchell the only one to do this thing right? Because Georgia fans sure as shit think like it. And I know this is going to be very controversial. And I want to say this. Once you put your hands on a woman, all of the defenses go out. Like, people are going to shit on you the rest of your life because you put your hands on a woman. But all of the, like, even from beat reporters, all of the ha, nana, boo-boo, look at you, you sucks shit that went on with the Jermaine Burton stuff, really cringeworthy from, like, grown-ass adults. Like, ha, guy had his heart ripped out on national television. He sucks. Like, I get he left Georgia, and I get some people are mad about that. I also get that he put his hands on a woman. I also get that he transferred to Alabama. But y'all hate that guy with a different kind of, like, gusto in your stomach and in your guts. And that one makes me feel a little bit weird. I'm not going to say you're wrong for it. I'm just saying it kind of makes me look the other way. You do the very same stuff with Bear Alexander. If Bear Alexander tore his knee up tomorrow, there would be people on Twitter going, ha, nana, boo-boo, wearing Georgia G's in their profile pictures. Like, that's just what it is. But since A.D. Mitchell's left, and since he did so quietly and did so to help pay for his child, I guess, that lives in Texas, everybody's just cool with it. Now, he handled it totally different. Like, Bear Alexander's handlers out here talking to the media, talking about Georgia ain't shit, basically, in the press clippings. I get that. Jermaine Burton, we already talked about it. Constantly doing the taunting shit, just being a nuisance. I understand. But you just have to shut up, transfer, win while you're here, not say a word when you leave, also leave to go back to your family, and don't say a word once you get there. Be very, very quiet. Is that the only path for a good football player to transfer out of Georgia and not be completely condemned for the rest of his life?
I don't think it has to be exactly that. But look, I mean, I'm not here for the crapping on Jermaine Burton necessarily stuff either. I'm not someone that would want to do that. I just think it's kind of lame. But I do get the fact of when he is standing in the end zone after the SEC championship game and he is taunting you and he is talking his shit to you, and like he plays the villain, we know that. Jermaine Burton loves playing the villain. He loves playing the guy that everybody hates. He did it on his Instagram story talking about like, all I'm thinking about is murder headed into this Michigan game. Like he loves that stuff, so he eats it up. He loves egging people on, and he's getting the reaction that he wants out of Georgia fans when he does that stuff. So like, but I also get why Georgia fans really don't care for him. I also get why you don't really care for Bear Alexander, because when he went to USC and he did the whole thing of like, well, I wanted to like, it's, you know, just talking recklessly a little bit. I think that what makes AD Mitchell different is because, like, I mean, I said it, like in his NFL draft declaration, this man is thanking Georgia almost.
Yeah. He had pics of him in a Georgia uniform.
No, I mean, he did it right.
Yeah, for
Don't get
sure.
me wrong.
I mean, I think the only other instance of this, and it's kind of over time not as looked as strong, but when Justin Fields left Georgia, there were still a lot of people saying basically, like, there were arguments that, you know, if Justin Fields starts, Kirby Smart has more national championships now. Like, oh, we needed him over Jake Fromm. Like, people resented Jake Fromm when Justin Fields left. So I think that's another guy where it's kind of him leaving, he was still beloved by a large portion of the fan base, maybe not everyone.
So AD Mitchell, this was real funny, because I know all y'all read, I know all y'all subscribe, I know all y'all pay credit card information to get the intel on your football team. I know who you are, because a lot of y'all are in our subscription base. Like, I know y'all go everywhere, so I know y'all know what happened with AD Mitchell. I know y'all know, or at least y'all have been told, you've been rumored. That dude missed 12 games last year with a high ankle sprain.
Mm-hmm.
What you think he was doing? What you think happened in the middle of October last year when everybody's like, why isn't AD Mitchell coming back? Why isn't AD Mitchell coming back? Why isn't AD Mitchell? Oh, look, he's playing for a national title. That's cool. Oh, shit, he's gone to Texas.
And I think he is the anomaly in this, because
it's the catches. It's the catches, and it's the national title. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the only reason you're cool with this. The guy basically healthy scratched for like 12 regular season games, played in a national title in which he won 65-3, and then left the next week. And y'all are okay with this because he dunked on an Alabama DB in 2021, and that's it.
No, you're forgetting Peach Bowl.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I mean, he has two of the most important
and the Peach Bowl.
Arguably two of the most.
He has two of the most important touchdown catches in Georgia football
it.
history.
It's not because of how he handled it. It's not because of what he did or didn't say. It's not because of what his handler did. It's not because Jermaine Burton did what he did. It's because AD Mitchell is one of the main reasons you won a national title, and you're okay with him being happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And
I'm glad we got to the bottom of that.
and he's also gone on record prior to even this NFL draft declaration and said, like, you know, love to Georgia fans, stuff like that, go Dogs, things such as that, when he doesn't have to. So I think that's kind of the thing.
I mean, like, look, if he's going to go out of his way, I mean, honestly, if I was a Texas fan, I'd be feeling a little weird about it, because if you watch the video that he posted about declaring for the NFL draft, he specifically says, when I got to Georgia, I felt like I was part of a family. And he's like, and I want to thank them, like thank the fans and everything. And then he just said, like, when he talks about his time at Texas, he says, this past year was just something incredible for me. Like, he doesn't say like, thank you, Texas. Like, I appreciate Texas, but he specifically names Georgia. And I get like a genuine emotion from AD when he talks about, like, in his little letter about how he enjoyed being at Georgia and how it was really tough for him to leave. I get that. And I feel like he does have some love for Georgia, and he shows it back to the fans. So it's completely understandable to me why fans would have an attachment to him. He has shown nothing but love to UGA.
I think the best comp.
Hold on. Save me a comp. I got to address something right quick. Burton hit a female, ... I guess you're okay with that. That's the opposite of what I said. It's the opposite of what I said. It's not okay to hit women. In fact, when you do, you open yourself up to every bit of piece of shit hate mail that you're ever going to get. And you have to accept that. Jermaine Burton has to accept that the rest of his life, that he gets to get talked to like a woman beater, like a man who put his hands on a woman, and that's fine. All I was just bringing to you is the fact that AD Mitchell did a lot of the same things that the other guys did, and he's loved on because he helped win, really, really helped win 2 national titles, and the departure and how he did so didn't really matter. It's what he did while he was here is why you still love him. But go ahead. The comp. You were going to give me a comp.
Give me a second.
I was too busy addressing the fact that people think it's okay to hit women.
Oh, yeah. The only comparable comp I have to AD Mitchell, and I don't even think it's a good one, would be Jalen Hurts. Didn't win a title at Alabama. He started 14 games for them, came back in and helped them win the SEC championship. But after that, left. Played one season in Oklahoma, took them to the playoff. But after that, I mean, and it's kind of you see this tug of war each year. I mean, maybe not as much now because they're sucking, but Alabama fans and Oklahoma fans fighting over who gets to claim him. So.
I mean, I also appreciate Georgia fans showing love to A.D. Mitchell because they've been consistent with this type of thing. I mean, it's not uncharacteristic for Georgia fans to root for players that transfer out. I mean, when Jacob Eason went to Washington, I think every Georgia fan was rooting for Eason to go out there and sling it, be a number 1 overall draft pick, everything that he was supposed to be. I think we've seen it with multiple other players where they leave and Georgia fans still want to continue showing love to him. I think they've done it with JT Daniels of all people. They love them some JT Daniels. I mean, sure, his career didn't end the way it did, and you know what? Maybe he didn't play through some pain when people wanted him to, but man, people still love him some JT Daniels. So I think Georgia fans have been consistent, and they're very decisive, and they're very clear on like why they do not like you if you transfer out, or why they do still appreciate you if you do transfer out. So they're consistent, and if you want to show love to them, then by all means do it.
And there is no in between.
No, there is.
You
no
are
in
either
between.
the Jermaine Burtons of the world or you're the A.D. Mitchells. There is no like.
I thought people were really perplexed about the Matt Landers thing because Matt Landers went 3 years here at Georgia not being able to catch a cold. And then he goes out there to Toledo and balls out, and then he goes to Arkansas and has a year too. So I think they were really perplexed about that one. Every time Matt Landers caught a ball, I saw on my timeline like, oh, so now you want to catch?
Yeah.
Which I get. You have the right to do all of those things. I think a lot of these comments are in confusion. Like I'm out here hating on Georgia fans tonight in the show notes. It's like it's not necessarily the case. To open the show, I just told you that I don't think this whole idea that you were kept out of a college football playoff thing is reasonable. I think you lost a playoff game in the SEC championship game, and that's okay. You lose playoff games sometimes, and that's not going to stop once you go to 12. And then this one, I was just wondering, like, hey, why does A.D. Mitchell – I was just talking about it. Why does A.D. Mitchell get the damn good dog treatment from some folks? And we found the answer. He won. He played well here, and he shut his mouth when he left. He didn't talk. You didn't hear a word mentioned about Georgia football. What?
And he didn't hit women.
Yeah, and he didn't hit women. There wasn't a word mentioned about Georgia football until his NFL draft declaration announcement. I think that's the key. If you want to leave here, do so quietly and play well while you're here. And then whatever you leave for, however you leave, people will say you did it right. Speaking of doing it right, it was a good show tonight. Appreciate you guys being here. We'll see you tomorrow. I love you.